When was the last time you felt satisfied? How do you know you're satisfied? Have you done anything today that's satisfying? Are you satisfiable? Hi, this is Sara Russell. I'm a relationship coach, dancer, and Taoist. In every episode, I'll be exploring psychedelics, well-being, or the human experience, and this one is on how to get off the hedonic treadmill. The Hedonic Treadmill, which is also known as Hedonic Adaptation, is a term coined by Philip Brickman and Donald T. Campbell in an essay called Hedonic Relativism and Planning the Good Society, and refers to this observed tendency in humans to return to a baseline state of happiness, regardless of what good or bad things are happening to us. So if something positive happens to you, you get the raise, you have a sweet relationship, your expectations and desires will increase accordingly. So you end up returning to the same set level baseline of happiness. And this works with negative events as well. So if you suffer an injury or you lose that relationship, you will also eventually return to this baseline happiness, according to this theory. That's because there's this fading effect. We recover, we're resilient. So regardless if we're experiencing euphoria, despair, or rage, all of that will eventually dissipate, and whatever ripples those emotions sent off in your body will eventually still to this pool of your personal equilibrium again and again. Now, again, part of the reason for this is because we grow and we achieve some goals. And so when we meet our goals, when we meet our achievements, how we interpret a situation changes because our position within that context changes. So for instance, we might have more power in a particular situation, so then our expectations would adjust accordingly. So hedonic adaptation helps us pursue goals, but it can get a little out of control if it's unconscious and constant. So we get on this treadmill where no matter how many positive things are happening to us, no matter how many gains we make, no matter how many goals we achieve, we end up staying at the set point of happiness. And okay, let's break down what I mean by happiness, right? Because this may be a little abstract and it may be a little different from body to body, person to person. But I'm going to talk specifically about two different kinds of happiness. And the first one is hedonism. My favorite. Hedonism is the pursuit of pleasure. And it's the kind of pleasure that you get from doing what you want to do and avoiding what you don't want to do. And some common examples of hedonistic pleasure are sex, food. Hedonism is our lusty love of life. Then there's this other kind of happiness. This is eudaimonia. And eudaimonia is Greek and it translates to good spirit, and it's a different kind of happiness. It's the kind of happiness you get from achieving something meaningful or doing things that give you a sense of purpose. This is you've discovered your gift for the world and you're giving it to the world now, or you're helping other people, or you've accomplished a meaningful goal. And this type of happiness is a lot less affected by the hedonic treadmill. It takes longer to diminish than hedonic happiness, but both kinds of happiness are important to developing both resiliency to the hard times and also to have a satisfying life. So I gotta tell y'all, hedonic adaptation is my particular Achilles heel. I'm super susceptible to this. I have a really good life. And within that good life, I've had multiple people whom I love and who I love dearly tell me, it seems like when you get what you want, you're immediately seeing what else you can get. And the old me was like, yeah, duh, of course. Why wouldn't I be trying to get as much as I can, keep going until I have everything that I want? YOLO, right? I have very strong hedonistic tendencies. I'm an intensity fiend. My grandmother really indulged this. It's sweet. She used to say, being full is no reason to stop eating. And I took that to heart to the point where it became a lifelong philosophy for anything I'm hungry for, whether that's more tiramisu, positively obsessing over thermal cycling. I really like the intensity of the hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, or tripping out of my mind and becoming one with the cosmos. I love overindulging. It's this philosophy of too much is almost enough. And I'm not about to stop. But I do want to do it consciously. Conscious hedonism, yeah? I want to be able to do it in a way where I'm being intentional and not just habitually, reactively, mindlessly going through my impulses. But I'm going to come back to how to do that in a second. Because first, I want to tell you about this appointment I had with a doctor of Chinese medicine, Lita Drusilla. She's here in town in Santa Cruz. And I set up a half-hour appointment with her, and we started going through her basic intake. And she was asking me questions like, what is your sleep like? What is your food like? What is your eating like? What is your lifestyle like? And so I started answering her questions, and she was like, okay, so how are you sleeping? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm getting like 9 hours a night. As soon as my head hits the pillow, I'm passing out. Like it takes me less than 30 seconds to fall asleep. And I'm saying all of this with deep pride, like, yeah, I sleep so long and I sleep so deep and I fall asleep so fast. I'm bragging, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm nailing this. And she looks at me and she goes, it sounds like you might be sleep deprived. You're falling asleep as soon as your head hits the pillow. Like normally it takes people a couple minutes to fall asleep. Sounds like you're exhausted. And I was like, oh, well, that might be true. And then I was talking to her about my lifestyle and, you know, all the dance classes I was taking and all of the goals that I was pursuing and all of these different traditions and practices that I was trying to learn and do. And she looks at me and she goes, it sounds like you're living your life at an 8 or a 9. And I would like to live you to live your life at, and I interject super enthusiastically. I'm like, at a 10. And she leans back and she takes a breath and she goes, at a 7. So I realized that I was probably pushing it a little too far. And here's the thing. If we're constantly striving, constantly on the path of progress, that's exhausting. It's stressful. Even hedonists like me need our moments of shavasana. And like, trust me, I'm not trying to kill your buzz. I want you to enjoy the good life. And like I said, I'm going to keep enjoying the good life. But in the same way that when you work your muscles out and you need to switch off upper body days with lower body days, or you need to give your muscles a break so that they can grow, we also need to give our pleasure some pauses. We need to give ourselves some breaks in which to rest within that which we find pleasurable. On top of that, our ability to be satisfiable gets co-opted by the culture. And I'm speaking about capitalism. Again, you know how I feel about this, that nobody is ever enough. Capitalism sells us the idea that we're wrong or broken or not enough in some way, and then it sells us solutions to those problems, and those solutions don't actually work because guess what? You aren't actually something that needs to be fixed. But it does, this idea in the culture, it makes it really hard to feel satisfied. So what is enough to make you feel satisfied? What would be good enough? How would you know you had enough of what you needed? You had enough money, you had enough love, enough security, abundance, confidence, capacity, capability. What does good enough look like? How do we stop always needing the next thing for there to be something more, something better? The good news is we can shift our baseline state of happiness and we can teach ourselves to be satisfiable. Those two things feel really important to me. Shifting so that we can feel more pleasure, so that we can be happy, and then bringing awareness to that happiness and that satisfaction so that we can actually feel it rather than just kind of like, yeah, what's next? The first thing that you can do is create awareness. If we're always pushing, always striving, we don't get to experience the pleasures of our gains. So how do you know you're satisfied? What does it feel like? Where is satisfaction located in your body? For me, I stop holding my breath. I stop clenching my shoulders. I laugh more. My dantian, that lower center, it feels full, it feels warm, and my heart feels really open and light, and my mind feels clear. What does yours feel like? And to practice this, to really recognize when I was in an embodied state of pleasure, of satisfaction, of enoughness, my teacher, Nancy Chanteau, actually recommended that I that I do something to mark the moment. And what she suggested for me is, you know, that noise that Tinkerbell makes, that like that tinkling noise, that really sparkly noise that she makes. My teacher suggested that every time I recognize that embodied state of pleasure or satisfaction or enoughness, I imagine that sound in my mind. You could also come up with a gesture. You could also smell an essential oil. You could also pop a piece of chocolate into your mouth. Something where you're utilizing your body, utilizing your five senses to bring intentional, conscious awareness to that feeling of satisfaction in your body. That means you have to know what satisfaction feels like in your body. So dive into that, explore that. The second thing you can do is get clear on what would make you satisfied. Like, what are the things in your life that would be pleasurable and purposeful and meaningful to you? And, you know, I have a podcast on the ideal day, which I recommend you go and listen to so you can craft your ideal day. But I also want you to be able to experience satisfaction without all day, every day needing to be ideal. So rather than striving for a perfect ideal day, like we want to set the goal, knowing that we're not going to achieve that goal like all the time, 24/7, 100% of the time, but knowing that if we aim for it, we'll at least get closer than if we're not bringing attention to it. But also being able to have enough spaciousness in your body, enough pause in your body that you can experience moments of satisfaction throughout the day where you're dropping in and going, oh, yeah, like this moment is satisfying, even if the entire experience of the day hasn't been satisfying. So get clear, like what would be super satisfying, and also like what's enough? When can you actually stop and smell the roses? I struggled with this a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Again, same teacher, Nancy Shanto, reprimanded me once on one of the calls I was on with her. And she told me, she's like, Sara, you're not going to biohack nirvana, which even when she said it, I was like, we'll see. I've let that go now. I'm not striving to biohack nirvana anymore, because the thing is, we're going to continue to experience pain and dissatisfaction. And I want you to be able to still experience pleasure in the present moment and not constantly chasing the dragon, knowing that we're going to have low moments, and that's okay. Pleasure is still available. Satisfaction is still available. On that note, the third thing that you can do is accept what is, and that's accept both the positive and the negative. So when we avoid our negative emotions by constantly seeking distractions and pleasures, that only buries our pain deeper, and it forces it to erupt in this like super nasty, chaotic way. That's like one of those big red sore zits that doesn't quite come to a head. So like you can't get rid of it and it just makes you miserable. That's what avoiding your negative emotions does for you energetically. So create a big enough container for what hurts, for what sucks, so you can be with yourself, know yourself, and so that you know that you can handle your problems rather than pretend that your problems aren't happening, because we know avoiding them doesn't make them go away. So part of being satisfiable is being able to be with what is, both good and bad. And the last piece of advice I have for you, number 4, is stay in community. Stay with the people that you can celebrate with, that can revel in life with you, and also not just support you, but also people who can hold you accountable. And I don't mean persecute you. I don't mean reprimand you. I don't mean parent you or follow you around and tell you all of the things you're doing wrong. Accountability for me means the people who are going to keep you honest about who you say you want to be and how you say you want to show up. So the people who can go, hey, the way you told me you wanted to show up in the world was like this, and I'm not seeing you show up that way. Like, do you need to check in with yourself? Do you need to get some more support? Do you need to get some more resourcing? Because who you say you want to be and who you're showing up as, they're not in alignment right now. That's accountability for me. And I have those people in my life who really hold me to that in a loving way. To close, I am going to read you a quote from the amazing and wonderful Audre Lorde. And this is from The Erotic as Power. It is never easy to demand the most from ourselves, from our lives, from our work. To encourage excellence is to go beyond the encouraged mediocrity of our society. But giving into the fear of feeling and working to capacity is a luxury only the unintentional can afford, and the unintentional are those who do not wish to guide their own destinies. This internal requirement towards excellence, which we learn from the erotic, must not be misconstrued as demanding the impossible from ourselves nor from others. Such a demand incapacitates everyone in the process. For the erotic is not a question only of what we do, it is a question of how acutely and fully we can feel in the doing. Once we know the extent to which we are capable of feeling that sense of satisfaction and completion, we can then observe which of our various life endeavors bring us closest to that fullness. I hope you get close to that fullness today. I hope you can be present with your pleasure. As always, if you want more, you can find me on Instagram at Be The Radical Way. And you can go to trendswithbenefits.com to check out all of our written work on psychedelics, well-being, and the human experience.